Hey guys, welcome back to my shop. Today, I think we're going to do this. Build a drill press table for my drill press. This is a project I've been thinking of doing for a long time now, and I think today's the day. So why don't we come in a little closer? Okay, so here's what I have. It's basically the round metal table that came with the drill press. And with some double-sided tape, I put this half-inch piece of plywood here to kind of act as a backer board. That's all I have over here, and I think we can make some improvements. But there's a couple things that we have to keep in mind when we're building the new table for this. One is I have to be able to get to this crank over here. And this crank raises and lowers the table. So I still need to be able to get to that easily, and it still needs to work, without getting in the way of anything. On the other side back here, there is a lock that locks that table. And I also want to be able to take the new table off fairly easily because I want to be able to switch if I have to cut some metal pieces, that I can pull that woodworking table off and just use the metal piece and whatever I need to do for some metalworking stuff. So there's a couple features I like to get in the new table. I'd like to get a fence. I'd like to get some T-tracks maybe for some accessory hold downs. So let's head over to the bench and take a look at some of the scrap stuff I have. I'm going to try to build this project entirely out of scrap pieces. Okay, so a while back, before I sold my parents' place, I was working on a counter for the place. So I have some leftover, basically particle board that I think we can use for this piece. We also have some leftover Formica, countertop material that I can use on this piece too. So I might go ahead and use some of that up. I have a piece of hardboard. I thought maybe that might make good inserts. And I have some pieces for the fence. So there's some pieces here I can double up, turn these into the fence. I have these two larger pieces here that can be the base. So I think I got a good selection of wood, and I've been keeping most of this set aside for this project right here. So I think one of the things we got to do is we got to start figuring out clearances. I need to go and I need to figure out what clearances I need to make that crank and those knobs still work on the drill press. One of the things we're going to have to keep in mind when we do this is I can't have these come back too far because then they do hit. So there needs to be like a clearance, some clearance room right back in here for this thing to turn. If I come back too far, I'm actually going to hit it. So I think if we use something like this, that'll be fine. We just have to make sure we leave enough room for the base plate to do it, and then we can put the other pieces on top. I'm going to use the metal table of the drill press to figure out the rough dimensions of this spacer piece. I'm also going to lay out where this piece needs to go, as well as the slot holes, so I know where to drill the holes to mount the new table to the old table. I use my combo square to figure out where to put the holes. This way they're an equal distance from the back of the board. I'll just eyeball the center. That's about as accurate as I need to get here. So what I'm going to do is we'll drill a hole for these to go in, and then from underneath, with maybe some sort of spacer on here, this will screw up into the thing from underneath the metal table. I don't necessarily have to cut this out round. I don't think that's really necessary, but I do want to trim it and make it a little smaller. I'm going to use a Forstner bit to lower the T-nut down a little bit so the board on top won't interfere. This will also have the good thing of locking the T-nut in and keeping it from backing out. I'm going to drill the through hole to accommodate the bolt. I'm going to hammer the T-nut into place. I think it's in. There you go.
Add the second one. I'm going to go ahead at the table saw and cut the bottom section to the final dimension. I'm going to go ahead and glue this up, but I also want to put some screws in the bottom, and that's what I'm marking out here. I'm going to go ahead and drill some shank holes for some screws. Now I'm going to go ahead and countersink them so the screws sit below the surface. The top we cut to dimensions is on the bottom. Everything's flips upside down. We're going to go ahead and trim the bottom section later, but what I want to do is go ahead and mark where the screws will go, and I'll drill pilot holes for the other side. I'm going to go ahead and circle the little divots. They can be really hard to see on this particle board. I'm going to go ahead and glue this up. I was out of Titebond. The only glue I had that wasn't bad was this Elmer's glue here. It should do the trick. I'm screwing it together anyway. I'm going to go ahead and put 1 metric crap ton of clamps on this thing. I figure if I can get it glued up as best as possible, I might as well put the clamps on. While that's drying, I'm going to go ahead and make the fence. I'm going to take 3 pieces of particle board and sandwich them together to make the thickness of the fence I need. I'm cutting the 2 outer pieces here. I'm readjusting here. I'm making the centerpiece a little shorter. This will accommodate some space for the T-track. This is what it will look like when you sandwich the 3 pieces together. The shorter piece is just short enough to allow for the thickness of the T-track. I'm going to also screw this together. This is what I'm doing right here. I'm marking out for the screw positions. One final test fit before I screw everything up. I hopefully not screw it up, but screw it together. Last test fit before we screw it together. I'm going to go ahead and cut the ends to final dimension. I'm using the thumb knob in my T-track there to act as a depth stop. Works pretty well. I'm going to go ahead and cut the T-track to length. You can cut it right on the table saw. The carbide's much harder than the aluminum. I'm going to go ahead and mark out for holes. Some T-Track comes with the holes pre-drilled. This one didn't, so I'll just drill the holes over at the drill press. Quick test with the stop blocks, making sure everything works. Time to go ahead and remove all those clamps. I'm going to use a flush trim bit to bring the one side to the exact dimensions of the top that we already cut. Or was it the bottom? Whatever. I'm taking my time. I'm removing a little more wood than I would like to in one pass, but I found it worked fine if I just took my time. Flip it around, do the other side. Here's the riser piece. I'm marking out so I can trim it down. It doesn't need to be as big as it is. I'm taking a rasp and rounding over the pointy corners here. I'm going to go ahead and do a round over on this, and I'd like it to be smooth around the corners. The roundness will just help my hands. You know, when you're underneath, you won't feel that sharp corner. Doesn't really serve any other purpose than that. Hey guys, I think that's going to wrap this one up. Next time, we'll finish the drill press table.